scrapper.com. In this episode of the ABCs of Simple Scrapbooking, I'm going to tell you a little story about my calculator. So this is an HP 32S2 calculator, and I got it, I think freshman year in high school, quite a few years ago. And if you're not familiar with HP calculators, most of them are RPN or reverse Polish notation calculators. And so what that means is to do 1 plus 1, I need to do 1, enter 1 plus. So maybe I just blew your mind there. But that's how these calculators work. And they're very handy for doing lots of calculations at once. And I used to be a little bit of a math club nerd, and I was actually in some calculator competitions. So the point of the story is that when I was in high school, my buddy suggested that this calculator would let me work faster and would be something that I would really enjoy. But I was totally skeptical. Even though everyone else was doing it, you know, I didn't think it would work for me, and it would just be too weird. But I gave it a try. I got the calculator, I started using it, and as you can tell, I still use it today. This is my calculator that I use every single day because I'm no longer a math nerd and I have to use it for basic simple math. And so I was thinking about today for this session. This is B is for beta test. And when it comes to your scrapbooking, I think it's important to be skeptical. Just because if someone has a good idea or everyone's doing it, it's important to try it out first. And this was a relatively small investment at the time. I think it was maybe $25. So not a huge, it wasn't a $100 graphing calculator. It was just a little calculator where I could test out whether or not RPN would be something that I can handle. And I think in this community, we often say, well, I need to do this. I have to do Project Life because everyone's doing it. Or I need to start doing 8.5 by 11 layouts because those are popular. Or I want to use washi tape because I see it everywhere and it's so fun. And then maybe sometimes you make an investment and maybe it's not for you. Or maybe sometimes it is. And so what I wanted to talk to you today about is this concept of beta testing. So the jargon of beta testing comes from the computer software world, where they release a beta version before the final version is released. It allows them to iron out the kinks, figure out if this is going to fly with the marketplace, and make some decisions about where this project is going to go. And so what I'd like to suggest to you is that you try on that concept of beta testing more with your own scrapbooking. When you want to try a new technique, buy just 1 or 2 products to try that technique, not everything under the sun. When you want to test out a new style of scrapbooking, maybe take a class or just try to copy an individual page, but just kind of step your baby toes into the water, baby step into the water without jumping in head first. Because I think oftentimes we feel like we need to go whole hog, but we don't know yet whether or not it's going to work for you. So doing just a little bit will give you a sense and a taste of whether or not a new type of project, a new way of scrapbooking, even new technology is going to be something that you want to keep using. So I mentioned technology, and there's always the latest and greatest coming out. New cameras, new editing software, new photo management software, and it can be really tempting to want to have the latest and greatest, but it may not work for you. So wherever possible, I always recommend trying trial versions of software to see if this new version meets your needs and has enough additional features to warrant an upgrade, or even if it's a new purchase, whether or not it's a software change that you want to make. Maybe you're most comfortable using the software you've been using and it's just not the right time for you. So before you make that investment, you can do some research and determine whether or not, from this trial version, if a piece of software would best meet your needs. The same goes for equipment. Even if you really want that fancy new camera, maybe the buttons are in a different place than what you're used to. I know that I use Canon cameras, and I probably would never switch to a Nikon because I'm so comfortable with using Canon cameras. And I've tried to use people's Nikons before, and I can never figure out what buttons to push and where they are. And so I think your comfort level is far more important than having the latest and greatest, because that's what's going to determine how well you use your piece of equipment. You know, even older point and shoot cameras, we had this 5 megapixel Fujifilm camera for the longest time, but it had a lot of manual settings that I knew exactly how to use it. I knew how to maximize it for taking, you know, pretty good shots in low light, which is hard with a point and shoot camera. And it was the best thing for me for a long time. And so I didn't get a digital SLR until I tried one out and I figured it was time and then I could make that leap. The same goes with maybe new lenses for your camera. You can even rent them on the internet these days, where you can try out new equipment by borrowing or renting before you make that decision on whether or not to make that investment, especially on more expensive pieces like that. This concept of beta testing can make the biggest impact with the stuff of your actual scrapbooking. I know that I have stuff hidden away that I bought with good intentions in mind, but I didn't really think it through, and it ended up not being a project that I could finish. And so this is really about the intersection of product and projects. We often will just get a wild hair and go off on the internet and order all these things, whether it's a digital or a tangible product, and then it's like, oh, well, I forgot about X, Y, and Z that are going to prevent me from either keeping up with that or finishing that or even wanting to do that, because once I dig in, it's just not the right thing for me. And so when you're tempted to buy a lot of new things that you've not tried before, I guess one of my best examples is the Mr. Huey mists. I bought 8 in one time once, and then I discovered that misting is something that's too wild and uncontrolled for me, and I don't like things that are very wet. And so it wasn't a good fit for my style of scrapbooking and for my comfort level with disorder, I guess. And I think that this happens so much that we want to do what Susie or Janie or whoever is doing because they create beautiful artwork, but it may not be the right technique, the right style, the right process of scrapbooking for what makes sense in our own lives. And so I just want to leave you with this idea, particularly right now. Right now, we're in mid-December 2012, and as you start thinking about 2013 and the projects that you want to take on, think about whether or not you can do a beta test period for that project. Can you invest just a small amount of time or money to try something out and see if you can stick with it, to see if it fits your lifestyle, your creative habits, before kind of going whole hog? And I think this approach, kind of a more measured approach, often leads to a little more creative satisfaction because you have that control. You can say, I gave it a fair shake, it wasn't for me. Or I gave it a fair shake and I love it and I'm so excited and I want to keep going. But what it does is it eliminates that guilt factor that, oh my gosh, I invested all this and then I couldn't do it, I couldn't keep up, I couldn't finish the project, and now I feel guilty about that. But by beta testing, you can prevent that from happening in a lot of cases. So I hope this was a helpful tip for you, and thanks for listening. The ABCs of Simple Scrapbooking is brought to you by Simple Scrapper, where you can find solutions for stress-free memory keeping. Visit us at simplescrapper.com and sign up for email updates where you can get a free gift.